Hello. So my family situation is a bit complicated and I really hope that you guys don't judge me or my ex-wife too soon and keep an open mind. So, I, 42M, met my late wife Rita in college and we got together shortly after graduation. We were together for almost 2 decades and have a 15-year-old son together as well. But we lost her to ovarian cancer almost 3 years back, and it's complicated because she had been diagnosed almost 2 years before she passed away, and at the time, both of us had been considering getting a divorce. Things had just not been going well for a real long time and neither of us was happy with the other. We would pretend everything was fine for the sake of our son. We just didn't get along well anymore, and it had been that way for almost 4 to 5 years before we finally acknowledged it. One day, she sat me down and she told me that this was not working for her and she was just not happy with the way that she used to be anymore. A lot of things had changed since our initial years of marriage and I had a good sense of it as well, and even though I wanted to feel bad about it, I just felt relieved, so we came to an agreement that within a few days, we would break the news to our son and let him know that we were separating. But we were never able to do that because just 1 week after we had that discussion, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. It had gone undetected for way too long because the symptoms were just not noticeable enough, and unfortunately, it was much too late by the time she was diagnosed. Obviously, divorce was off the table as soon as we found out about the cancer because we couldn't deal with all of that at once. She had given me an out, though, by telling me that I was free to leave her if I did not wish to stay and take care of her while she was sick, because she had actually been cheating on me for almost 6 months before she had finally acknowledged that our marriage was not working and told me about her plans of getting a divorce. Even then, she had no intention of telling me about the affair until the divorce was over because she was afraid of how I would react. But after her diagnosis, she said that her conscience wouldn't allow her to let me stay with her in spite of my unhappiness and take care of her both financially and otherwise while she was lying through her teeth to me. I felt kind of sad about it because we had been together for so long, and even then, she had an affair and wasn't even going to tell me about it, but it is very hard to hold against someone who is literally dying. So I put all of that aside because I had made a promise to her, in sickness and health, right? And that's why I chose to be there for her. I also didn't think that my son would like it if I chose to leave his mother, and I don't even think that he would understand what was going on since he was just 10 years old at the time. So we hushed up the affair and never spoke about our decision to get divorced again, and continued to put up a front for the sake of our son until she passed away 3 years ago. But we told our families about everything though, since we didn't want any drama later, exactly that kind of drama that's happening right now after she passed away. My parents were fine with it, but her family was kind of iffy about our arrangement. However, they couldn't exactly disagree with it. Rita had been very firm about what she wanted. I was there with her, until the very end, and I will never regret it. Even though she had cheated on me, even though we had not been happy together for a really long time, she was still a really important part of my life, and I'm glad that I was able to be there for her during her last days. And for the record, she ended the affair soon after the diagnosis, and never spoke to him again. Anyway, that was that, and since then, I have kept in touch with her family, and her parents and brother occasionally visit to see how my son and I are doing, but it's mostly just been me and him. I know that he misses his mother terribly, and sometimes, so do I, but I have made an attempt to move on with my life. I had already kind of fallen out of love with Rita by the time she was diagnosed, and so had she, which is why we were almost heading for divorce. But after she passed away, it just felt wrong to date anybody. So I had made up my mind that I was not going to go out of my way to look for love, but well, it happens when it happens. About 6 months after she passed away, I met Lana, 40F. We met through work and there was an instant spark that I'm sure both of us felt. But I never acted on it because I was still a husband in mourning and I didn't want to do anything inappropriate. She was the one who took the initiative to ask me out, and when that happened, I just couldn't stop myself from saying yes. After almost 1 full year of Rita's passing, I finally had a date again and I was as happy as could be. I had already had this conversation with Rita before she passed away, and she had told me that she was completely fine with me dating other people after he was gone, and I had no reason to feel guilty. She herself had been cheating on me because she was unhappy in our marriage. At least I was doing the decent thing and looking for love outside of marriage after she was gone, so I knew that I wasn't doing anything wrong by then, and I felt more comfortable with the idea of going out with other people. I also explained my situation to her, and she was very understanding since we had to keep everything under wraps for a couple of months because I didn't want her family to lose their minds over our relationship. We went out for almost 6 months without telling anyone, and after that, I realized that I really liked her and I wanted to introduce her to my son because I could see her being a part of our family in the future. The first time I introduced her to my son, it didn't go quite as I had expected. He was very cold towards her. It was understandable since he probably did not expect me to bring home another woman. His mother passed away so quickly, but I knew when the time was right, and he was old enough, I would have to come clean to him about the truth. Because I really liked Lana, and I intended on being with her, I didn't give up and tried to get him to thaw a bit so he would end up liking her. He was always really cold, but civil whenever she was around. Since it wasn't like he was going out of his way to be nasty to her, we decided not to address the issue so soon because things were still delicate at that point. However, recently, Lana and I got engaged and I'm planning to get married in the next couple of weeks. It's all happening really fast, but I wanted her to move in with me, and she said that she didn't feel comfortable doing that until she had a ring on her finger because she had had a lot of issues in her last relationship. We have only been together for almost 2 years now, but my parents know about her, as does my son, and I didn't see any reason why we couldn't get married. So I proposed to her just a few days after we had that talk, and she was a bit skeptical at first, but she said yes. Soon enough, I had managed to get her to agree to move in with me, but the day that I told my son about it, he started throwing a temper tantrum because he thought that it was just too soon. I tried to get him to understand where I was coming from without telling him the truth, but he just called me a cheater, and that's when I realized that I would have to come clean to him. So after he had calmed down a bit, I explained the entire situation with his mother, and how our marriage was falling apart and her affair, and the agreement that we had decided we would stick to. But now that she was gone and enough time had passed, I wanted a chance to live life on my terms again, but only if he was fine with it. I wasn't sure if he would understand because he was still really young, but even though he seemed kind of confused and lost, he told me that he would be fine if I wanted to build a life with Lana now. So I was really relieved that he had agreed to this, and a few days after we had the discussion, Lana moved in with us. After she moved in, there was no way that I could keep this relationship hidden from Rita's family anymore. My family had known about Lana right from the beginning, but I hadn't told my ex-in-laws because I didn't know how to bring it up with them, and honestly, I didn't even think it was necessary because this was my life now. Anyway, they came over a couple of days after Lana moved in to see how my son was doing, and when they saw Lana, they were very confused, so I had to explain to them how I had been with her for the past 2 years and we were now engaged, and they didn't say anything, but I could see that they were a bit annoyed with me. I don't know why they felt that way, since they had known all about my arrangement with Rita, and they had also known that she had had an affair earlier, so I was perfectly well within my rights to try and move on. Anyway, they didn't say anything after I told them about our engagement. They just congratulated me, but their tone gave away everything. After a while, my ex-brother-in-law Jonathan, 44M, asked me to come out and smoke with him, and I knew that this was just code for he wanted to discuss these things with me in person. But I still went out with him, and once we were outside, he congratulated me yet again and started asking me questions about how long we had been together, when I had met her, and all sorts of other questions to deduce whether there had been any overlap. I was getting pretty annoyed because I didn't think it was appropriate for him to interrogate me like this, but I still put up with it. Eventually, he asked me how my son was taking it, so I told him that initially he was pissed at me and had even called me a cheater, but later on, after I had explained the situation to his mother to him, he seemed to understand where I was coming from and was giving Lana a chance because he wanted me to be happy, so that's something. When I said that, Jonathan did a double take, and was all like, "How could you tell your son about something like this when he is still so young and has just lost his mother?" He seemed very shocked that I had told my son the truth and started freaking out at me about how it was just not the right time. He was much too young and the passing of his mother was still too fresh in his head. That was his way of looking at things, but I thought it was the right time to let him know, so I did, and as his father, I don't think that I was answerable to anyone. But I did not want to argue with him. I told him that it would be better for us to go back in, and when we finally did, he whispered something to my in-laws and all of them quickly said goodbye to my son and left. Then, about an hour after that, my father-in-law called me up and told me that they were really disappointed that I had chosen to tell my son the truth without even consulting them first. I don't know why they even expected me to talk to them about this and discuss it with them before I did anything, because this was my son, my marriage, and my decision when I wanted to tell my son the truth. My son is 15, and if I think that's old enough for him to understand, I don't think they should have a problem with it, and we got into a really heated argument, after which I hung up on them because I wasn't interested in wasting my time and energy arguing with people who just wouldn't understand. They kept insisting that I was ruining my son's perception of his mother by letting him know these things and said that I needed to do some damage control, quickly. I didn't think it was necessary because it was not like my son suddenly hated his mother. He still remembered her fondly, but now, things were just a bit more complicated. And that's how life is. I don't think I did anything wrong by telling him the truth. But the more that I argued with them, the angrier they sounded, and by the end of the phone call, John was threatening to fight me for custody because he did not think I was a good enough father if I was treating my son like this. He believed that I was toying with my son's emotions and telling him things according to my convenience rather than his emotion and maturity. He said that I only told him the truth because I wanted to live with Lana and I couldn't deal with his rejection of my girlfriend, which is why I threw Rita under the bus without even thinking of how it would affect my son. He made me sound like the most selfish person ever, and since then, I have been rethinking everything because I don't know if what I did was the right thing or not. So Ida for telling my son that his mother, who passed away 3 years ago, had had an affair while we were married? Edit. So some more about Lana and me, since you guys wanted to know a bit more about our relationship and her, in particular. I had mentioned in my original post that she wanted a ring on her finger before she agreed to move in with me, and that's not because she is a gold digger or something, like you guys were speculating. I think I had also mentioned that she had had a pretty bad experience in her last relationship, which is why she had said that. So, about that, the guy she had dated last kept leading her on, and she wasted almost 4 years of her life with him only to eventually find out that he had a whole other family and a wife in another state, which is why he couldn't get married to her. Her ex kept promising her that he would marry her eventually, but that never happened and their breakup was really hard on her, so she did not date anybody for the next 4 years until she met me. After an experience like that, I think it was pretty obvious that she would want some sort of sign of commitment from my end. She probably didn't want to get led on like the last time, and I won't judge her for that. She accepted all my baggage and issues without question, so I will obviously do the same for her. A lot of people thought it was strange that my son had come to terms with what his mother had done so quickly, so just to clarify, I had informed him about my decision to have Lana move in with us in the morning, and by the time he agreed, it was almost 1:45. I explained everything about my situation to his mother in the morning, after his outburst, and then he had the entire day to think about it. I did not bother him at all that day, and he was just sitting in his room, silently, so I guess he must have done some introspection and come to the conclusion that he was fine with me trying to move on with my life. I did not pressure him in the slightest. I had even told him that I would not feel bad if he needed more time to think about things, and I was willing to put all my plans with Lana on hold for his sake. So there was really no pressure, trust me on that. I would never do anything to jeopardize my relationship with my son, and he's just a generally mature kid for his age as well, so I guess that's why he was able to come to that conclusion on the same day. And I'm pretty sure that he wanted me to be happy, so that's why he was willing to give Lana and our relationship a chance. Update 1. Hello. So 5 days have passed since I made my original post, and after I blocked my in-laws, they did not try to contact me. I guess they are getting up to something behind my back, but I couldn't care less about it. I'm just focused on what my son feels right now. After everything that Jonathan and my in-laws had accused me of, I was feeling really weird about everything. Even some people in this sub had left pretty nasty comments, and there were a lot of supportive comments as well, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was probably being selfish. I spoke to Lana about it, and she assured me that she did not think that there was anything selfish about what I was doing. I deserved a chance to be truly happy, and if it meant being with her, then I shouldn't let that go. That made me feel slightly better, but she told me that if I really wanted to take my mind off of these things and get a solid answer, I needed to talk to my son about it and ask him what he felt. I thought that was great advice, so a couple of days ago, I finally sat him down and tried to talk to him. Because after I had spoken to him about my situation with his mother, we tried to completely brush that thing under the rug and pretended like it never happened, because both of us found it very awkward and heartbreaking to talk about now, since Rita was gone. And I guess neither of us wanted to ruin the way we thought of her and wanted to look back upon the time that we had shared fondly, which is why we were acting like it wasn't a big deal, but the truth is, it was. It was a massive deal, and that's why we were so nervous to talk about it, but I know that we had to discuss it, and so, we did. At first, it was really very superficial, and we tried to convince each other that we were just fine, but eventually, he just broke down. He told me that after that big reveal, he had started looking at things really differently, and mostly, he just felt bad that both of us had to sacrifice so much of our happiness to make sure that he didn't feel bad, and he felt responsible for everything. I'm glad I spoke to him, because otherwise, I never would have found out that he was feeling this way, so I comforted him to the best of my abilities, and I told him that the only thing that made both his mother and me extremely happy was him, nothing else. It was the one thing that we could agree on, and he had always been the glue that had held our family together, and I couldn't be more thankful to him for it. I tried to explain to him that even though we are grown-ups, we also do make mistakes sometimes, and we are not perfect, and we try to be, but it's complicated and difficult. And he seemed to understand. He told me that for what it's worth, both of us had always made him feel safe and happy, and he was glad that he was our son. We promised each other that we would never have any secrets again, because they just led to more complications, and now that he was old enough, and I could tell that he was mature enough to deal with things, I didn't have any reason to hide things from him anyway. But even then, we wanted to work on our relationship, and he's just a young boy, so he's been through a lot so far, and I don't want it to take a toll on him. So we came to the conclusion that it would be better for us to go to therapy, both individually and together, so we could fix our relationship for the future. I think it'll do us both a world of good, and when I spoke to Lana about it, she was in agreement as well. After the two of us were done talking, we had a family meeting, and I told him about how his grandparents, Rita's parents, had reacted to the news of me telling them that he knew everything. I had said that I would not keep any secrets from him, so this was me trying to have an open and honest relationship with my son, and when I told him about it, he said that his grandparents were being ridiculous, and so were his uncle, because he did not think that I had done anything wrong. He agreed that he might not be an adult, but he was old enough to know these things and try to understand his family, so it was completely fine with him. Of course, what I had said had indeed affected his perception of his mother, but it had not ruined it like they believe it has. He told me that if they visit again and try to turn him against me, he's not going to stand it, and I was really glad to hear that, because it just means that in spite of everything, I'm still the person that my son loves and trusts the most, and I intend on living up to his expectations forever. So now that all of this is out in the open, my in-laws and Jonathan can bring it on, and I'm not scared anymore because I have Lana and I have my son's support. That's really all that I need to deal with them, to be honest. The last time that we met, I let them get away with the way they spoke to me and threatened me because I was not sure of myself, but now, that's not the case anymore. So, yeah, let them bring it on. Update 2. So, after almost 2 weeks of having absolutely no contact, my ex-in-laws and Jonathan showed up this morning along with their lawyer. And with them, they brought along the paperwork for me to terminate my parental rights. I opened the door, but I did not invite them inside to sit, so Jonathan told me that she had brought along the paperwork and now, they could finally take my son off my hands because I was clearly not interested in being a father anymore, and I was more inclined to frolicking with Lana. I thought it was a very weird thing to say, and I told him to get out almost instantly because I had no intention of dignifying this with an argument. But he refused to leave and started yelling for my son to come downstairs because he knew it was the weekend, so he had no school today. When he started shouting, I absolutely lost it and ended up shoving him really hard. I probably shouldn't have done that, but then, he shoved me right back and within seconds, we were crawling, and it was really nasty because 2 grown men doing stupid crap like this, it's just not acceptable. And later on, I felt really guilty and stupid that I had done something like this. Eventually, my ex-father-in-law and the lawyer were able to break us apart, and Lana had also heard the shouting, so she rushed inside and held me back after that. By then, even my son had heard the noises, so he had come downstairs and both of us were red in the face, and I kept telling my son to go back to his room and let me deal with this, but when Jonathan told him that he was free to leave now, my son simply stood there and declined as politely as he could. That seemed to shock Jonathan and his parents, and they tried to explain to him that my son really had no reason to continue living with me if he didn't want to, and my son clarified that he knew that. He wanted to continue living with me because I was his father and he didn't think that I had done anything wrong. Then, he told his uncle that he really respected the fact that he was looking out for him and really admired how strongly they felt about the situation, but he was fine and he did not need anybody to rescue him. My ex-in-laws tried to argue with him and said he didn't know what he was talking about, and he was too young to realize what was good for him. But then, my son said that he really didn't care because ultimately, I still his father, and he trusted my judgment. That was all that I needed to hear, and I calmed down considerably after that. Once he said that, I told Jonathan that the kid had made his decision, so now, he could leave. But Jonathan just stood in the doorway with the lawyer and kept insisting that my son did not know what was right for him until my son got frustrated and told him that he just wanted to be left alone because all they were doing was annoying him, and they did not know him as well as they believed they did, and in fact, they didn't even know their daughter as well as they thought they did, let alone him. So now, he just wanted them to leave us all to live in peace, and then, it was his turn to be yelled at, but that was not going to happen on my watch. As soon as Jonathan started shouting at my son, calling him stupid and ungrateful, and whatnot, I shoved him hard yet again, and this time, he lost his balance and took a few steps back. So I took the opportunity to slam the door shut and told him he needed to leave or he would be dealing with the cops. He then cursed me out but eventually left, and that was that. After that, I gave my son a huge bear hug and he hugged me right back before he went back to his room. I just hope that Jonathan and my ex-in-laws have learned their lesson now, and they know that they cannot brainwash my son to go against me. Update 3. Hello. Quite some time has passed, and as of now, Lana and I are married. We got married a couple of years ago, in a private and small ceremony in our very own backyard. There were very few people, it was mostly just family and a few of our close friends. My son was my best man, and it just goes to show how much progress we have made as a father and son, because just a while ago, he and I were fighting because she had to move in with us. Now, he was my best man for my wedding to the same woman. We have been in therapy individually and together for the past couple of weeks and have made a lot of progress, so I would like to thank those therapy sessions as well. We have not heard a peep out of Jonathan or his parents ever since that last showdown that we had at my house, and my son put them in their place. My son and I have them blocked everywhere, so they can't even reach out to us if they want to, and if they do try to talk to us, I'm just gonna file for a restraining order against them because I think we have made it sufficiently clear that we don't want them around anymore. If they can apologize and try to make amends for the way that they behaved with me, then I might even consider it, but for now, it's a no-go for me. But anyway, my family is finally happy, and that's more than I could have asked for.